All right. Hello, everybody. In today's Ignite talk, I'm going to be talking about GKE Autopilot. Reason why, yesterday we saw GCP Cloud Run. A lot of similarities here, so I wanted to showcase it on the other side. My name is Michael Levan. I do everything and anything Kubernetes and platform engineering related. Right? So first and foremost, what is Autopilot? I don't know if anybody else calls it this, but I like to call it serverless Kubernetes. Why? Because with managed Kubernetes, we no longer control the control plane. With Autopilot, we also don't have to control the worker nodes anymore. Okay, so everything is, I don't want to say seamless because we still have to worry about resource optimization and cost optimization and deployments and getting everything up and running, but we don't have to worry about the worker node piece anymore. Yet we do still manage everything else. So just because the infrastructure is managed by GCP does not mean that you don't have to worry about security and networking and application performance and all that fun stuff. All right. So a couple of considerations here that I want. Oops, sorry. Let's go back here. Autopilot versus standard. Kind of just already talked about this, but with Autopilot, you don't manage the control planes or the worker nodes. With standard GKE, just like AKS, EKS, etc., you're managing the worker nodes, but not the control planes. All right, and a couple of considerations here. Number one, as you move up the stack, so let's say you're bootstrapping Kubernetes with kubeadm or something like that, you have full control over the CNIs, CSIs, CRIs, etc. With managed Kubernetes, you lose that capability, so you're kind of tied into whatever the cloud is going to give you. With Autopilot, you're going a step up where you're really tied into whatever the cloud is going to give you. So just as an example here, just recently, you can now run things like Service Mesh, Istio, etc. on Autopilot, whereas if you look at EKS Fargate profiles, for example, you still can't run Service Mesh. Why? Because there's a management layer that you simply do not have access to. All right, that's it for the slides. I just want to show some brief code here. As we can see, 21 lines of Terraform configuration to get an Autopilot cluster up and running. If you compare this to what you'll need for EKS, for example, it's triple the amount of lines of code. So, of course, because you're not managing the infrastructure piece, everything's a little bit more simplistic in terms of getting it up and running. But again, just keep in mind, with simplicity comes losing customization ability. All right? And once your cluster is up and running, you're going to see something similar to this. It's going to look just like it would any other cluster. Key difference here, if you're doing it in the console, Autopilot, of course, recommended by GCP, but again, that recommendation is going to be based on what you need. It's a pay per pod, which is quite interesting, especially if you're using things like scaling to 0 when the load isn't there. So it could be cost savings. You'll have to kind of figure that out and play around with it for yourself. And then you have the standard configuration that you can still deploy, which again, you're managing those worker nodes, not the control plane. After that's deployed, you can get into it via the Cloud Shell terminal. You can do a simple connection, which will bring it down to your kube config locally, so you can hit it via your local terminal, VS Code, whatever you want. And one thing that I just wanted to showcase here, again, going back to what we were talking about with, you're losing some functionality, right? So for example, with Autopilot, yes, you can enable Service Mesh. Yes, it is. Oops, I think we lost screen. There we go. All right. So with Autopilot, yes, you can use Service Mesh. However, it's going to be Istio, right? So if you want to look at something like Console Connect, or you want to look at something like Linkerd, you're tied to whatever GCP is going to give you. Same thing, you have several different security options, disk encryption, binary authorization, RBAC, but again, you are tied to what the cloud provider is going to give you. So long and short of it is, if you want to implement something serverless Kubernetes related, just keep in mind the core differences that you're going to see is losing that customization ability, right? So it all depends on what you care about. If you want to be able to deploy any CSI, any CNI, any CRI, if you want full control of what your environment looks like, something like Autopilot or even managed Kubernetes services like AKS, EKS, GKE may not be for you. But if you say, hey, we don't want to care about the complexity of Kubernetes, really just want to get this thing up and running so we can start orchestrating our containers, Autopilot may be a great option for you. Thank you, everybody.